Welcome to Coffee and Closers. I'm Nikolai Bedore, and I want to personally invite you to join me and one of today's top performing sales stars for a cup of coffee and authentic conversation. And our collective goal is that you will walk away with tangible knowledge that you can apply to your sales efforts today. Are you ready? Grab a cup, fill it up, and let's get into another episode of Coffee and Closers. Closers, welcome to another episode of Coffee and Closers. We're so glad you're here. For those of you who have not met, my name is Nikolai Bedore. I'm a 15-year sales vet, host of this Coffee and Closers, and the Chief Revenue Officer of Closers Media. So what does Closers Media do, you ask? Brilliant question. I will tell you. Sales is a language. It's a life skill, right? It's something that we all need to know. So in my opinion, why not be the best at it, right? At Closers, we implement and teach a conversion to close sales system that helps B2B professional service and founder-led companies close more revenue and grow. To accomplish this, we offer our hands-on implementation of our system, plus live coaching to help you absorb all information via learning by doing. Closing more business is a skill that you are looking to master in 2021. Hit us up, closersmedia.com. All right, commercials over, back to the show. Oh, I'm so excited. All right, whenever we can, and we love to have non-classically trained gurus who beat the system, invent their own way to procure and close new business, something that's comfy to them. With our audience today being primarily creatives and marketers and so on, this is the guest for you. Today's guest, James Carberry, checks all the boxes. He's the founder of Sweetfish Media. He's a producer and host of the B2B Growth Show. He's a frequent B2B sales contributor on Entrepreneur Magazine, HuffPost, so on and so forth. But in my opinion, and Gario is on the line, but you can't see him right now, our fanboy here, not to throw you in the bus, buddy, but a big fan of James, as I am too, but content-based networking is revolutionary. And we're going to talk all about it today. Please, closers, put your hands together and give a massive welcome to Mr. James Carberry. Ring, ring, brother. How you doing?
I am fantastic, man. This is going to be a really fun conversation.
I've been looking for it for 4.5 years. You guys don't know this. Well, some of you do, but there's two people that I give a lot of credit to for the launching of Coffee and Closers and what it is today. That is Mr. Gario Harrison, the Cocoa Days, and a conversation I had with James a while back, pacing around the Lunds, and he just inspired this idea. And here we are today. So welcome, man. It's an honor to have you on the show.
I love it, man. Let's get into it.
All right. So the title of the episode is Content-Based Networking, right? Yep. You're a self-proclaimed introvert who carved out his own path in sales via content, this idea of content-based marketing. You know, for those that don't know, help us understand what it is.
Yeah. So content-based networking is basically a way to reverse engineer relationships with the exact people that you want to know. And so I'm not necessarily, I wouldn't call myself an introvert, but I do not like selling. I've never really liked selling. It always confuses all of my entrepreneur friends. Oh, you can't be an entrepreneur and not love selling. Well, that's the case for me. I guess I'm just weird. I don't like the idea of asking somebody for something, and you can't. It's really hard to sell something unless you actually ask for it. And so I really struggled with sales in the early days of the business. And about 9 months in, I had been doing a podcast with a buddy of mine and realized that anybody that we asked to be a guest on our show would say yes. And I thought, this is really interesting. If we start to ask our ideal buyer to be a guest on our podcast, then we'll all of a sudden start stacking up relationships with people that can actually buy from us. Well, that's going to be really helpful for the business. And I'm a very relational person. Like I said, I love spending time with people. I just don't like feeling like I'm trying to coerce them into doing something that they don't actually want to do. And not that is at all what actual sales is, but in my brain at the time, I was like, I don't want to have to sell anything. I don't want to have to convince anybody of anything. And so I kind of stumbled into this methodology that we now call content-based networking because I didn't want to sit on the phone and cold call all day and ask people if they would, let us produce a show for their company. Instead, I I was like, hey, want to be a guest on our, top 100 marketing podcast? And they were way more willing to talk to me whenever that was the premise of our conversation, as opposed to, making it a sales conversation. So that's a little bit of backstory.
We had an interesting kind of conversation before this. You guys noticed a different background. That's because I'm a technological idiot and I couldn't figure out how to use the new studio. So my bad. You said something interesting though, is when you started out, and I love epiphany moments, because we've had several iterations of what was BBG, now Closers Media, which is fundamentally a different thing, teaching how to fish versus fishing for.
Yeah.
You'd said that people in the early days used to approach you and say, hey, I'm a subject matter expert, right? I want this to be a whole spotlight on how awesome and smart I am. Can you kind of talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So many companies come to us and they want to brand their show around their company, around their expertise. And the reason B2B Growth, our show, is successful is because we actually didn't brand the show around our expertise, which is B2B podcasting. It's not called the B2B Podcasting Show. It's called B2B Growth. And I think when you brand, so many companies make this mistake, but when you think about, had we named our show the B2B Podcasting Show, who else cares as much about B2B podcasting as we do? Well, our competitors do. And the same is true with SaaS companies. If a SaaS company that, for whatever reason, their expertise is, their expertise is SEO. But if all they do is talk about SEO, well, they're not necessarily going to attract their ideal buyer to their content. They're going to attract other people that are also experts in SEO and want to continue to deepen that expertise. And so by instead framing and branding your show around your ideal buyer, which for us is a B2B marketer, not somebody who's, wanting to do a deep dive in B2B podcasting, it allows you to feature your ideal buyer as a guest on your show, build one-to-one relationships with each guest, while simultaneously creating content that is very attractive and helpful for a lot of your ideal buyers. So we've got a lot of marketers now that listen to B2B Growth. We're getting like 160,000 downloads a month now. Wow. In addition to every guest that we feature on the show is essentially an ideal buyer for us. And that doesn't mean every guest turns into new business. We actually drive significantly more business from LinkedIn than we do from guests on our show. But I think in the last 90 days, 2 of our guests turned into new business. Now we had 9 new deals in the last 90 days that came from LinkedIn. So I'm not saying that this is going to be, like the absolute best strategy in the world in terms of sales development, but it definitely pays for itself. And so when you have a show and you're implementing your show into your ABM strategy by branding the show around your ideal buyer, asking your ideal buyer to be a guest on that show, and then you're going to do business with a certain percentage of those people that you had as a guest, it now funds the revenue that you've driven through those few guests that maybe it's 5, maybe it's 10, I don't know, over the course of the year, depends on how many episodes you do. That then funds the content creation that is going to allow you to do content marketing. And in our experience, our content marketing efforts are, so much of our new business is coming from inbound. But if we didn't have the show, we wouldn't have all the content we have to be able to drive the amount of inbound that we have. So anyway, that's how content-based networking ends up. Like I like to say, if ABM and content marketing had a baby, it would be really, really cute, and it would be called B2B podcasting. And content-based networking fits right in there in that vein. It's really a combination of ABM and content marketing.
I love it. So can we stay here for a minute? I kind of want to unpack this a little bit more, if you don't mind, because I'm hearing marketing now. Okay, so we've got marketing people that are listening to this. We serve professional service companies and founder-led companies, right?
Yep.
But sometimes it's salespeople. Actually, a lot of salespeople listen to this. A lot of first-time founders, highly technical, right? Yep. They just want to know how to get better at this thing that scares the hell out of them, which is sales. So I can see how this works for marketing. Okay, and let's say, for those of us who are responsible for closing business, how do we balance our time creating this content while running active sales cycles? Like, how does that?
I think the way you have to look at it, Mikolai, is that when you're getting the right guests on your show and you're actually interviewing your ideal buyer, what better time could you be spending than having conversations with your ideal buyer.
Nice, well played.
So it's just the focus of the first couple conversations. One is going to be the pre-interview like you and I did. The next one is going to be the interview where you're actually recording. The focus of the conversation is not, hey, do you want to buy from us? Do you want to take a demo? The focus of those first couple conversations are going to be around the content you're creating with them. It's building rapport. It's understanding them. It's understanding what their expertise is so that you can highlight their expertise, showcase their expertise on the media channel that you're building, whether it's a podcast, YouTube, blog series, whatever. I'm not romantic about podcasting as a channel. I happen to think it's the easiest way to do collaborative content, but you can do it with a blog. You can do it with YouTube. You can do it on a lot of different content types. But regardless, like I hear so many salespeople that are like, I can't spend all this time doing this podcast. Well, you're not. You're spending all this time having conversations with people that can actually do business with you. And they're actually going to want to talk to you whenever you feature them on something that makes them look awesome, as opposed to just showing them a boring demo that they don't actually care anything about. But once you've built a relationship with you, once they know you, like you, and trust you, they're going to be much more susceptible to wanting to do business with you because they know that you've cared about them first. And you got to tangibly show that you cared about them first by creating content and making them look like a rock star. And it's really hard to make somebody look like a rock star when you don't understand what their expertise is. You don't understand their perspective. And so podcasting forces you to understand that. And it doesn't happen automatically. You have to be great at active listening. You have to actually give a crap about what the other person is saying. But when you do that, you allow yourself to, you win yourself over them because throughout the interview process, throughout the content collaboration process, you're showing them how much you value them. You're asking probing questions. You're lifting them up. And through the end of the process, if you're doing it right, if you even, mention the opportunity to work together, they should jump at the chance. Because they're like, man, we may or may not have a need. I don't know, but I love you. Like I've loved this experience between our pre-interview and our interview. And if I get another chance to talk to you, I want to take it. So like that's how they should be thinking about it. This is like the batter's box, the pre-interview, the interview. You're in the batter's box, ready to go to home plate and step up to bat. But if you don't sit in the batter's box for a little bit, then you're not going to get the opportunity to go to home plate and get the at bat because the cold email that you send trying to get them directly onto a demo call is going to get ignored or deleted.
Oh, this is great. This is, now I'm fanboying, I love this approach because sales, we spend most of our time at BBG just trying to educate people on what sales is. It's relationship development. You know what I mean? That's what it really is. It has nothing to do with convincing you because once you get to that point where, all right, I trust you, we ride that journey together and we internally sell and get Linda over and ops to give us the rest of the budget we need to purchase this thing. We got ourselves a new friend. So I love everything about it. I have two questions, unfortunately, and I want to stay in this lane, but I want to veer, but I won't.
Yeah, man.
I think maybe just a quick point, and then there's something that you said that I really, man, want to hear more of your thoughts because I've never heard it put that way. But I think that was something you overcame, and I just want to be very clear for our listeners at home. Okay, the question I had that you already answered is how can the average everyday salesperson leverage content-based marketing? And I think a lot of our listeners might be like, I don't have not even the time. I just don't have the equipment. I don't know how to starting a podcast. I've been told I'm supposed to do that, but where do I even begin? You said blogs and other things. Can you kind of go a little bit deeper into that? Because I have no doubt some of the listeners are thinking, well, sure, it works for him. Look at his studio,
Yeah. If you could see that, this mic arm is $150. This mic is $60. This mic flag was $50. For a couple $100, you have literally everything I have. We're recording this on Zoom in a post-COVID world. Like everyone and their mom is on Zoom. So you can get fancy. You can use Riverside. We are big Riverside fans. I think it's riverside.fm. And it's basically just allows you to record a little bit higher quality video. But other than that, I mean, it is a dead simple setup. Like record on Zoom, and you can go get a Blue Snowball mic. Like you don't even need a fancy mic to do this stuff. You can host your show on Anchor.fm, which just got acquired by Spotify a couple years ago, I think. And that's free hosting. Like you do not need to use an agency like ours to be able to execute this strategy. You just need to get started. And the story that I didn't share before, Nikolai, when we first started doing this, I originally thought, because we were a blog writing service when we first started the company, and I originally thought that our ideal buyers were going to be churches, particularly like church plants, like small churches that are just getting up and going. And the reason I thought that is because we had one particular blogging client we were doing great work for them on the blogging front. We were basically writing BuzzFeed style articles locally, and it was driving a ton of traffic to this church's website. And so I was like, man, we could do this for every, basically startup church in America. And what I found out by doing, so I have that thesis, like, okay, our buyer is, the senior pastor at a church plant somewhere in the United States. So I start a podcast called Plant Better, and I reach out to 100 church planners. So pulled from a list. Okay, instead of asking these people if I can do content marketing for them, I'm instead going to ask them to be a guest on Plant Better. I kid you not, Nikolai, 80% response rate to that email campaign. Whoa. I don't know of anyone ever getting an 80% reply rate on a 100-person email send, but we got it. And we ended up doing episodes with 45 of those 100 people. Of those 45, I realized that most churches don't have budget for content marketing. And the client that we had that I thought made it, a good fit ended up not, the reason they were a good fit is because they were funded by a very affluent family member of that church planner, that was in that church planner's family. And so they could afford, a few $1,000 a month for content marketing, but most churches cannot. Figured that out. And then we then pivoted into saying, hey, instead of us being a blog writing service, what if we offered this podcasting service to B2B companies, which is when we pivoted, when we started B2B growth. We originally thought that it was going to be VPs of sales that would buy from us. We spent 6 months going after VPs of sales, did 150 episodes, realized VPs of sales don't have budget for headcount. They don't have budget for anything that smells like marketing. So we then shifted our focus, and instead of featuring VPs of sales, we started featuring VPs of marketing. And that's when we realized, like, okay, this is our ICP, this is our buyer. And so for the founders listening to this, you're running a founder-led company. I mean, my story of us pivoting now into being a multi-million-dollar podcast agency. I mean, being a podcast agency seemed crazy 4 years ago, 5 years ago, because everybody was a marketing agency. You wanted to be everything for everybody. And so when we decided to niche and say, no, we're only focusing on podcasting, well, that limits the amount of people, like the number of companies that need marketing, a lot. Number of companies that think they need podcasting services, way less than that. And we've been wildly successful because of this strategy of using content-based networking to get clear on who your ICP is. It's not church planners. It's not VPs of sales at B2B companies. No, it's VPs of marketing at B2B SaaS companies with 50 to 5,000 employees. That clarity came from this strategy. And for all of the founders listening to this, I think the exact same thing can happen for you. And so don't be married. If you're in the early stage, you don't know who your ICP is yet, go on your best guess. Like start a show on Anchor, do a podcast cover art on Canva, and just start a show. Reach out to 100 people that you think could be your ideal buyers. Make the show about them, not you. Brand it around that persona, around them, and then start having conversations. It will be the best use of your time that you can possibly spend because you're talking to potential buyers. Like everybody claims that they're so busy, but I'm like, what are you busy doing? Like, what is more important for a founder than talking to your customers and building culture for your team? Like, and so I'm just convinced that this is absolutely the go-to-market strategy for your audience, for professional service providers, especially. They're typically not raising a ton of money. They don't have a bunch of cash to burn on building SDR teams and trying to make predictable revenue model work 15 years past its prime. Like you can't do that. You don't have the dollars to do that. But I guarantee you have a few hours every week to reach out and ask who you think might be your ideal buyer to be a guest on a show that they don't even care if it has 6 listeners. And if your grandma and your cousin Sally are the only 2 listening to it, like they don't even care, because they want, everybody wants to be featured. They want to look awesome. And you're giving them the opportunity to do that. So anyway, rant over.
No. Oh, buddy, you're not done. No, I'm not going to keep pushing. I got so many questions that we're going to run out of time as per huge. Closers, light up the chat box. Should we have James back? I mean, busy as this guy is, might be in 2024, but let's have him back. We're going to run out of time. I know it, because I love that, man. First of all, the ICP thing, we, in our sales playbook, one of our plays is we really focus on a month of preparation. We take a whole month. We go through all these things about pulling third-party validation. We've done this before in the pocket. We really focus on the pocket, right? Mm-hmm. Now, you brought that up, how you got to your ICP. You guys, you missed at the front, but I'm like, James, these days, we haven't talked in a while. Tell me about your ICP. And he was like, bang, 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 bang. And it took years to get there, right? I mean, you just said it. What I love about that story is, number one, we're all figuring out. So if you're listening to this and you don't have your ICP nailed down, the best way to find out is do what James is talking about. Get market intel from your prospects. They're going to tell you fit or not. But some of our listeners here, they're software developers. We do a lot of work with software developers. I'll tell you right now, I can think of 3 that are like, there's no way I'm popping on a pot, or I didn't want to be interviewed, let alone be the interviewer. That's not a skill of mine. You mentioned a couple alternatives, but we kind of glossed over that. Could you just kind of tell other ways where ABM would work for those folks that are like, I don't want to get a camera nor the microphone?
So if you literally just want to do, jump on Zoom and just have a conversation where you ask a preset number of questions. I've noticed that John Bonini is doing this for DataBox, a software company based in Boston, where I think they are doing it for a podcast, but they have their guests fill out just a quick survey, answering questions about a specific metric that they've moved in their business, and kind of give a brief background of that. I really like that direction of like focusing the content so much that it's like, hey, just answer this one question, or just answer these 3 questions. You can jump on Zoom, have the conversation, and then have a writer on your team, or outsource it on Upwork or something to just get a blog post written. Like if you hate the way your voice sounds, or if you don't like the way you're seeing yourself on video, like then don't use that content, but you do written only thing. But regardless, like it would be, I think you'd be hard pressed to say whether you're technical, non-technical, whatever. Like if you're the founder of a company, until you can hire, a group like you guys, or hire a salesperson, like you're going to have to do this. Like I hated it, and I had to do it for the first year of our business because I couldn't get anybody else to do it for me. And as much as I hated it, it still had to be done. And so I would much rather have these conversations under the premise of, hey, let's create some content together, as opposed to having these conversations around like me trying to talk somebody into, paying us to do something for them. And so, yeah, that's what I would say there.
Awesome, man. Hey, speaking of, so like for blogging, I mean, these guys have been trying to get me to blog for, I like to be, this is my safe space, is to be on camera. You know what I mean? Yep. But are there any tools that you would share before we kind of switch subjects? Any tools that you would share, any things that would make people's lives easier? Like Otter is one for me, because I actually love taking notes, but I can't read my handwriting half the time. So I back it up with Otter. Any tools like that you can share that people can leverage?
So Otter's good. Sounder.fm, the podcast host we use, automatically transcribes your episodes as part of the hosting costs. So that's really cool. But honestly, if you're trying to actually rank for search terms, transcribed interviews usually do not rank in Google. So that's not like, I can't remember the last time I ever searched for something and a podcast transcription popped up. So instead, what I would advise, if SEO is your goal and what you're wanting to do, we use a system that Dan Sanchez, our director of audience growth, brought to us about a year ago. It's called Google Alphabet Soup. And so you literally, no tools, no anything, just you and going to Google. You type in the keywords that you want to be found for. some of the base keywords. So maybe it's sales enablement, maybe it's, marketing technology, whatever those keywords are. And then you put a space after that core keyword and you type the letter A, and you see, what does Google auto suggest for sales enablement A? So you're going to see like sales enablement assessment, sales enablement analytics, sales enablement sales enablement And you go, okay, you write down those keywords, and then you go to sales enablement B, sales enablement benchmark report, sales enablement, whatever. And that becomes what you can do. So either solo episodes, if you're doing a podcast, but that becomes the content that you create, and you're letting Google tell you what people are searching. The reason those terms are popping up in auto-suggest isn't because Google feels like it. It's because that's what people are actually searching for. And so if you want to meet people where they actually are, build your keywords based on what Google is telling you to go after. Now, a lot of people will say, well, how do I know how much search, how much search volume you're getting? There are tools like, there's like Moz and Ahrefs and like tools like that will help you with that. But from what Dan has found running a whole ton of Google AdWords, the numbers that those tools give you are so inaccurate. Like a tool like that would tell you that this particular search term gets searched 10,000 times a month. But because Dan has run so many Google ads, he knows that number is not accurate, because he's actually paid for that keyword to rank as a part of Google's paid product. And he knows that because of how much he paid for that keyword, there's no way that it's getting 10,000 searches a month. So he just completely distrusts those tools. And his approach is like, I just want to build an engine to rank for all of the keywords associated with B2B podcasting or B2B marketing. And so that's what we're doing. That's how we're doing it. And in the last year, we have seen 100% year-over-year growth in our page views to our site, just by writing articles that we know people are already searching for by using Google Auto Suggest. It's like super low tech and crazy effective.
It's my favorite kind of tech. Clearly not using the camera right now. That's brilliant, man. I'm glad we record these shows, because that was, if I can see Gary's face right now, he's nodding. Like, that was some solid gold. Okay, so we talked a lot about content creation and content, and right there's a lot, because we focus on conversion. I would love to get your kind of take on, what should we do before and after content creation to ensure that we're maximizing the effort of
Yep.
deals, the inbound stuff that you got, conversion, like how do we maximize the effort to get to push deals forward?
So we have a process called POV discovery. Yeah. And what I like to do is in the pre-interview. So I like to set up a separate pre-interview ahead of the podcast interview. And I ask one of three questions. Okay. So the first question is, let's say your show is about sales enablement, to go back to that example. So we would say, what's a commonly held belief, Mr. Guest that I'm pre-interviewing? What's a commonly held belief that you passionately disagree with? And just shut up and let them start talking. Then ask another question and say, what is something that people in the sales enablement community are doing right now that they should stop doing? Or what's something that nobody in sales enablement right now seems to be doing, but they should start doing it tomorrow? From those three questions, you will have got your guest rolling on something. Usually that first question, what's a commonly held belief about X that you passionately disagree with, works like freaking wildfire, because it gets them talking about a counter, like something that's different, or something that is rubs against the grain of, what most people consider to be normal. And it works like crazy. And now you've actually got the premise for a really solid episode. So by asking those three questions, we call them POV discovery questions, you've now set yourself up to have a great interview, and you've solidified the relationship, because now they truly see you as a journalist. They see you as somebody that cares deeply about the craft of creating content, not someone that's just trying to sell them something. And so that's what I would say. Add POV discovery into your pre-interviews. The other thing you can do in pre-interviews that I found is really effective is to do original research through your show by asking a set of 5 to 10 questions. So we just did this with B2B Growth. I think we're at 81. We're trying to get to 100. We've asked 81 B2B marketing leaders a set of 15 questions. Like, what's the marketing channel that's produced the best results for your business? What's the last marketing book you read? What marketing podcast do you listen to? And by asking 100 B2B marketers that, we're going to have an epic blog post that's going to rank for B2B marketing statistics. We're going to have tons of content that we're going to be able to run on LinkedIn. We're going to be able to do lots of podcast episodes around the insights that we uncover from that original research. It can fuel our newsletter. Like, that original research is going to go gangbusters for us. And we did it as just a little extra 10-minute conversation on the podcast that we were already planning to do. So those are the two things that I think you could do on the front end of the interview to deepen your relational equity with the person, which you said before, sales is relationship, but it also helps you create better content.
This is magic, man. We're a couple minutes shy here, but I got one quick question. Only because they're based in Florida and they're listening right now. We got a new prospect, hopefully, to be working with us shortly. They're new to virtual selling. This is new to them, and they're bringing us on to help them with that. Where does personal branding play into that? What are your thoughts on personal branding today in a virtual sales environment?
Yeah. So this is interesting. I just got to flesh this out the other day. I think with your personal brand, you actually should focus on your expertise. So on LinkedIn, whenever I'm posting content on LinkedIn, pretty much all I talk about is B2B podcasting. So everything we've been talking about up to this point with the podcast, I keep it about my buyer. I'm highlighting my buyer's expertise in my podcast. But in my personal brand, the stuff specifically, I'm talking about LinkedIn. I don't do a lot on Twitter, and I barely do anything on Instagram. But on LinkedIn, I have become synonymous. My name has become synonymous with B2B podcasting because that's all I talk about. And so from my experience, that has seemed to work really well. Have a show that's all about your ideal buyers and allows you to build one-to-one relationships with your ideal buyers by highlighting them. Supplement that strategy with talking about your expertise on LinkedIn to build your personal brand. And the combination of those two things, I've found it to be a very lucrative combo.
Dig it. Well, I knew this was going to happen, closers. We just scratched the surface, and here we go. We got to be respectful of his time because he's such a big deal. I wish we had 3 more minutes, but we don't. So here's what I would like from you guys. Number one, James, first of all, if you don't have James's book, you're nuts. We're going to throw a link here in the chat box so you guys can purchase it and support James. But how else can we support you, brother?
Thank you, man. I think subscribing to B2B Growth. So if you're in B2B marketing specifically, particularly if you're an in-house B2B marketer, I think you're going to get a ton of value out of B2B Growth. We're doing a deep dive this month. It's February 2021 when we're recording this. We're doing a deep dive on ABM, account-based marketing. Dan Sanchez is interviewing all the ABM authors, a bunch of ABM practitioners. We're doing case studies. So subscribe to B2B Growth wherever you listen to podcasts. And then you can find the book Content-Based Networking on Audible, Amazon, wherever you find books. And we'd love to stay connected with you there. I'm also on Clubhouse too. So I heard you mention it at the top of the episode. I'm doing 3 Clubhouse rooms tomorrow alone. So I'm going all in on Clubhouse at James Carberry. If you want to follow me there, we talk to a lot of B2B marketers and I think it'll be helpful for you.
I was wondering about that. Gary and I, again, running out of time, so much to talk about, but we got to have you back if you'll make time for us, man.
This has been a lovely conversation. Definitely will.
All right. So what do we think? What'd you learn? Well, if you like that, check out coffeeclosers.com for upcoming episodes, recordings, and more. And don't forget to check out our sponsors. Each one has been hand-selected. They're best in class. Until next time, we'll see you at the next Coffee and Closers. Cheers.
Say live, come on, live. Live a life we love. Gotta live, I said live. Live a life we love.